Okay. Hello, everyone. Wait, move that. It's me. Um, it's like the thumbnail, I guess. Um, I'm running out of time. I tried to do as much as I could to pull this together. Um, so this is going to be kind of quite scuffed. Um, but hopefully, I don't know. Anyways, let's see how it goes. Okay, and blah blah blah. You don't have like ton of time to edit this, so leaving stutters and such in. Unless like the audio is like terrible and it's like super clicky, then maybe I'll redo it or do something about it. But yeah, I'll try to make it okay. In the media after this, I ran out of after the first slide. I ran out of energy for making graphics. So yeah, it's just gonna be like whatever. But I, know that the intentions were there. That counts for nothing. But so question one. Okay, yeah. Anyways, this is a video about the underground, as evinced by this image, and what I tried to imbue there. So question one, does underground exist? Click to add subtitle. Well, in my opinion, yes, it does, is the short answer, but that's not so helpful right away. However, like, if underground literally means like obscure artist and some other like kind of metric that I wasn't able to fit here, then I guess maybe it doesn't exist. I don't know. I was like, yeah. Anyways, but we can see that people are using the term, and so how are they using it? And so I have this hypothesis that is the underground is dot dot dot. It's something like a circulation of money, power, attention, sounds, iconography. It's a series of discourses. It's a media environment. It's a marketing term, a fantasy, a collective fiction. I don't know. Is it one of those? Is it all of those? But yes, of course. It's not decapitated and cut off from the body. Nothing is. It's all one body. But just because blood circulates to your brain and your dick doesn't mean that you don't have a brain. You don't have a dick. Unless you get a vaginoplasty, I guess. Yeah, but even then. Target audience trans femme, other people listen to. Okay, hypothesis of, what underground is slash might be. So perhaps the underground is another kind of take on this is that underground is somehow involved in constructing images of blackness that is like of coolness and so forth, and setting bounds of what is acceptable. I'm having in mind with this, recent discourses about, Slayer does or doesn't count or whatever. So it was just to say that there's discourses about, hairstyle and other kinds of aesthetic things of like what's tough, what's not, and okay, etc. Underground is an imagined community. It's people on Twitter, it's people on Instagram who imagine themselves as a community. All communities are imagined. Says Benedict Anderson. He has a whole book on this. I'm not really talking about that, but yeah, I sort of am, but I'm not. Honestly, I think one compelling or at least interesting definition for underground would be music or artists working through themes / subjects of objectification and industry exploitation of their art, which obviously is not unique to this quote-unquote underground music, but I think it's interesting how often it comes up. And these are some examples, but I think there's many more. I just didn't have time to pull together. Which is essentially part of my intro here saying is like, I feel like if you're going to say that underground doesn't exist, you got to do a lot of work to prove your claim. Click to add title. Underground as capital is routed through such channels as, XUC. There's just like streamers. I'm having as many of them, so you could say Black by Max, Kaisana, I don't know, whatever the current meta for that is. And, fashion industry, the record labels, and so in this way, I think it's wrong to entirely just dismiss the underground or these things, or I don't know what I meant there, in any kind of way, because, for one reason or another, interested powers think that they are worth investing in. Okay, they means here underground and underground artists and whatever these other machines are. And so maybe you can ask, why is that? Why are people, or interested powers investing into these things? And even if not, even if these machines are not totally radicalizing people, like if you know, XQC or, you know, these streamers or these fashion industry, these record labels are not radicalizing the people that are interacting with them. You know, they're probably still having some impact, and maybe that's why it's happening. So, okay, I don't remember how I did this. So I guess, you know, case study or example one, in his Our Generation / Well interview, Edward Skeletrix is talking about his you know, interactions with Brian Jones and record labels and so forth, where, you know, we can bracket the fact that it's necessary to account for how we can be skeptical in important ways of what Skeletrix is saying in this interview, because it's, you know, scripted or being presented and directed in a certain way. But I think that we can also understand that this, in his saying it, is representing that this is a discourse that exists, and there's probably some truth to this. And his comments, I don't have time to reconstruct them here, but essentially he was saying that record labels, using this example of Brennan Jones, are willing to pay a lot of money. I think it was like 100K plus, like 300K. I don't know. Watch the interview. It was kind of interesting. You know, for record deals, for potential up-and-comers, and if you do it right, it doesn't actually require like that much. Like if you know what you're doing, you can make it work. And there's sort of a suggestion in how he was saying it that sort of anyone could do it. But like that's like a lot of money. Like you just gotta lock in and do what they're asking for or whatever. Now I think that, you know, they're like being complicated, whatever. But yeah. So the section closes itself out. So then the second question, you know, part of this is that there's an issue apparently with the comprehensibility of music in the era now that, you know, Rage is around. Older people are saying, I don't know about all this, you know, which is fine. Record labels clearly care to some extent. You know, it's somehow profitable. See, maybe it'd be worth unpacking that as we can. Or why is Nettspend on the runway? Who flew that boy to Paris? Nah? And so forth. Okay, anyways, question 3. What does it really mean to grapple with fascism in this present era? Because the fact is that it's really integrated into media machines in a way that leftism is not, and to me a compelling way of narrating that is, since at least Gamergate, and even before that, click to add titles. There have been moneyed interests involved in constantly propping up and creating fascist and right-wing, alt-right, whatever we want to say, for engaging with and producing narratives about and so forth these spaces. And so like we can say like, oh, it's kind of silly, Gamergate, whatever, like, and it's not really worth talking about, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you can say that, but I think there's a real reason that it can be worth talking about, is that rightist media machines are very financed and very able to affect people. I mean this in the whole, you know, manosphere or whatever. Is this a lasting impact? I don't know, but there is some kind of impact. And it has an impact on people, even if it's a little bit ridiculous, even if people move out of it, just flash in the pan, whatever. And so I think it needs to be grappled with in some kind of way that it doesn't seem like it's necessarily happening to the full extent right now. It seems like there's, you know, a lot of dismissing. The fact that underground or whatever is part of this apparatus, you know, should be acknowledged as well. And so like Skeletrix, Dave Bluntz is also having an interview with Our Generation Music's Well show. MWell is the host of that. Okay, so blah blah blah. David Bluntz wrote the Yay Hitler song. The song was being a central part of, I guess, Clavicular, Nick Fuentes, Nico, whoever else thing where they went to a club and did whatever. Yeah, so that's a controversy or whatever. It's a big social media news story. Anyways, to the extent that, so it's a big enough story that to the extent that in a recent music video, I forget the title of it, it's in the description I think, Dave Bluntz addresses the incident by name, or maybe, I don't know if it's in the description yet, but it should be. Where he says like, oh yeah, sorry, like I was just so excited to work with Ye, like I didn't realize I was making like Nazi propaganda, my bad all the Jewish people and everyone else. And like in the music video, people get mad at him for making songs about like dropping of abusers, and he's like, oh, you know, it's just a joke, like I'm not an abuser, but they exist, so I make music for them. Something like this. You can watch the video to get the quotes better, blah, blah, blah. I'm not really constructing it as best as it can be. Okay. Well, I didn't end up coming up with a smoother pivot, but somehow, you know, bringing in Sam Hyde and so forth, Infamously, he's having ties with like Joey, and thus the collective, rap collective or whatever, Shed Theory. He's also been collaborating with like Bryce Dillinger and so forth. You know, Hyatt is an alt-right guy. That's not really debated. You can pretend to. Yes, and so anyways, this conflict of alt-right influence, presence, backing, however you want to narrate, is being a backdrop. Other sides of underground, especially, you know, quote-unquote drama or whatever, between, for example, Shed Theory and Haunted Mound, that, you know, docu-type channels like to talk about, blah, blah, blah. Who cares? Well, I don't mean to be dismissive. I just can't phrase it right now. Okay, click to add title. Supposedly underground is the drama of it all, but obviously that's wrong. Do you know nothing about money, about power? Do you not know about how bombs are made or who pilots drones? But even if we want to say at the level of culture, do you not see how this matters? Going to school and hearing people say that, hearing that people that look like you deserve to die, deserve what's coming to them, deserve the kitchen and the curling iron. You know, this is supposed to be like Manosphere and like these other subtexts. It's there, you can read it at the bottom. And if you're an audio listener, I'm sorry, but you know, yeah, anyways. Yeah, so even beyond people are directly aligned with Nazis, such as Sam Hyde or whatever, you know, which, you know, it should be noted are relatively minor figures, in a sense, within the, you know, sweep of the underground. But even like Nettspend, the fact is that he's essentially, you know, Aryan feature of a fed nubile white boy, like a young white boy, so it should be noted he's kind of like a fetish figure for a lot of people. That's my opinion, that's my reading. And his music, people, you know, can be critical. He's just thinking about sex and drugs, and, you know, he's using AAVV. You know, you can understand what I'm saying, hopefully. You know, why is he singing like this? He's just a kid, blah, blah, blah. This constructed image, I see what a sort of silly. Yeah. But, you know, it is silly, but that's sort of the point. But also, like, can we deal with that? Like, I don't think it's useful to be dismissive. Anyways, this is a lot of text. So yeah, Nettspend, not a Nazi, which, you know, I don't think he is. Even if record labels that are paying him so much money are not doing so to prop up Nazis or push alt-right agendas, which I don't think there's necessary evidence to say as such. It's still the fact that, you know, in the interest of capital, this is the case. Blah, blah, blah. So the interests of capital are dovetailing with interests of alt-right. They're tagging in and out with each other. This involves some guerrilla tactics, apparently, and it seems sometimes to be working. You know, and it's a way to make money and, you know, sustain, but it's not like really sustainable. I don't know, you can read that. I think it's like sort of gibberish. This is not really legible. I should have changed the text color. It was too late. Because, like, maybe underground has like a lot of definitions because there's different layers, I was sort of thinking. But then when I was putting this together, I was sort of realizing, okay, no, it's not like these different layers. It's like they're all together. It's not, you know, the fashion industry, you know, Nettspend is there, Hall is there, like whoever else was there during Paris Fashion Week. Like that is, you know, a circuit of commerce and culture and these other things that is connected with these other, you know, global corporations and whatever it is. Okay. There's a class component to this. Capital, whatever. In fact, this underground discourse is necessarily global discourse in a lot of different ways, having to deal with the ways that aesthetics and resources and capital and ideology are being trafficked up global thing. Sorry, my voice. There's like something in my apartment I think I'm allergic to. And yeah, I'm not going to get into all that right now. So, you know, there's a question of, I'm having, you know, that, you know, why is the branding of underground music in Taiwan, mainland China, Japan, South Korea, Brazil, why are all these scenes branded themselves as national music? Where it's like, you know, Japan, the UDG Cypher 2026 or whatever. What's going on with that? Because it's, you know, it's being marketed to whiteness, is my read on it, to white people. And, you know, this is a known fact that, you know, just in certain spaces, this is a known fact that underground, if you're, you know, getting big in music, it's because you're selling to white people. Because that's fundamentally, that's where wealth and power is situated in this current historical moment. And so I've been finding Dr. Jared Ball's writing on the myth of propaganda of black buying power or whatever his book is called, really activating in this sense, because he goes into different ways in which conception, that any kind of conception that doesn't confront the fact that global capital is oriented around whiteness and white people who own the lion's share of money and power, and that kind of move is happening on behalf of capital, and any kind of move that is happening on behalf of capital on this global scale, but even in local scales, is necessarily dealing with shoring up and reinforcing the positions and images of whiteness and white power, and so it's white supremacist to its core, in a sense. And so obviously that ties into how these things are situated with the alt-right, which is, about white supremacy. And so, yes, that clearly dovetails with capitalism, global capitalism, which is operating about, shoring up white wealth, white power. And then also just thinking about, the role that music plays in people's lives. Like, how are these different things connected? I was just thinking, okay, it seems kind of random that, EDM musician from Singapore, that is Beans Club, his music is in different Twitch streamers. I was seeing like different people. He seemed like, okay, and he's blah blah blah. It's also related to these different kinds of nostalgia culture pushes that are happening in these spaces and elsewhere. Like, oh, you love Y2K, oh, you love trance, oh, you love sex gays. You just want to go back to when these things were better, blah blah blah. And this is why all these Y2K anime, blah blah blah, because it's activating a culture thing. And for animes, you can talk about blah 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 blah. This fascist like lollies. Obviously, it's the incomplete narrative of why there's a commingling there. I've always found so much of the discourse of people trying to explain why are fascists into anime in different ways, so useless and so incomplete. And maybe this can be like another way of sort of taking that apart, but also this seems sort of redundant. Okay, this I didn't do, but maybe it's in the description. I don't know. Because then I've been wondering, as I've been working on some other projects, why are AI image aesthetics coming up again and again in music videos from quote unquote the underground, or however you want to construct it? Why is there so much appeal to glitch that's also being cited in so many videos? So much appeal to this kind of nostalgic reproduction for nostalgia that people literally did not live through in some of these cases. Why is that going on? In my opinion, I think it's because it's literally part of this same machine, like these interlinked machines of ideology, rightist ideology, capital, blah blah blah. The movement's imagination is not even like the interest of capital, like capital itself, global capital, yeah. Blah blah blah. Is there anything else? Okay, I think the rest of that doesn't matter. This is. And it feels, correct or compelling in a sense, and willing to still develop these ideas, but they are not fully developed. Because obviously I'm not fully correct, fully cohesive. Like, if you do not get that sense by now, wow, that's amazing. And it has to deal with the ways in which images and narratives of anti-blackness are perpetrated in this global way. Why is NTR a thing? Why are people so obsessed with blah blah blah? I think that those are connected systems as well. Different kinds of images, like, yeah. Okay, blah 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 blah. But anyways, my main point, which is not actually my main point, but one point that I was going to mention, that I guess we're getting to the part where it's just like scraps of things I wasn't able to sweep. Well, I mean, we were already there when I was putting these big text blocks. So one point that I had is that it doesn't really matter if Kai Cenat, knows is like really tapped into the scene, or if that's just an image that he's putting on. If people who are watching can say like, oh, he's not actually tapped in, because like the relevant part is that Kai Cenat and these other streamers are being a nexus through which to disseminate and produce opinions about music and so forth. Click to add title. All these people are having agency, and at the same time they're being instrumentalized by power. So that's to say, like, in a Dave Blunt's music videos, like, oh, like I really didn't know, like I just love Kanye, and these things happen. Which, watch that music video if you want. He's making other kinds of arguments. Maybe there's more nuance there. But it seems like he's evacuating himself as having agency in this sort of situation. And of course, these people do have agency, and they can make choices of their own. And, there is some kind of volitionality in how they're ending up in these places. But at the same time, they're also being instrumentalized by power. And so to just say, like, Dave Blunt's is to blame, or, Nettspend is to blame, or, people who are more culpable, so like Sam Hyde is to blame. Like, obviously that's wrong. These are just, singular players in this larger system. Who are, being instrumentalized, as I'm saying. This did not get brought up, but you can read it if you want. This, you can read that if you want. Okay, and so thinking about, okay, I didn't put some of this in the description yet. Positive examples, blah, 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 that stuff. Okay, and so, I don't know how I was going to build this in, but at some point I thought it was relevant to say, but it's not about taste, and it's something about the aesthetic, against the aesthetic turn. You need to be careful, mindful, intentional of the stuff you listen to, but I don't think you have to be like paranoid per se. Oh, because like there's some discourses that's like, oh, it's just about like good music or bad music. And ultimately like the politics of the music matters, not just like how does it sound or like what ideas it's exploring. It's not about being objectively right, every time, all the time, but like trying your best, like, but also like of course like the I don't know. Anyways, figure that out. I'm not going to go into all of that right now. This is genuinely something I'm still trying to work through. So if I'm wrong or making conclusions that are from bad evidence or something like that, please to continue these conversations if you can. Like if you don't want to, that's fine too. And I'm not trying to make conspiratorial. These are in progress thoughts. The responsible parties here are definitely not the Jews. Like to be clear, that's always been a scapegoat. Yeah. Okay, these are some other, potential positive examples. Step-chain matches, violets, yeah, etc. This is going to be description probably. This is like interpolating black dress. I don't even know why it says Q6 here. Like, I think that I just put that for fun, but I guess I don't know. The music is a magic, sure. That's from like a Black Dresses album. Well, obviously it matters since Capital pours so much money into, collapsing and controlling and co-opting it to deploy sort of a Michael Freddaism, because I was, listening to a lot of his lectures recently. He was saying like the state or capital, like one of the only things that they care about is what you think, because he was talking about like, oh, like some American people are saying like, oh, the government, like they don't care about me, like, oh, it doesn't matter if I vote or whatever. But he's saying like, well, if that was true, like, why are there these like, media machines, such as the news and like these other things, like vested with so much money, and record companies is part of that. It's not over. It takes work, constant struggle. Oh yeah, here's like, I don't know, whatever that is. Here's a point I guess I was gonna tie in at some point. Record labels facilitate consumption of blackness in nation. I guess I was going to expand at some point more about, consumption of blackness, image transition, inextricable from global capital. There's some issue of fast fashion. I don't know how that was going to come up. Something about Kanye saying he wants approval of, fashion elite, which is, white people. I've come down a little bit from, the extent of meaning I was in when I was first outlining this, so I might not be able to reconstruct with the fervor and, certainty that I was having at the time, all the connections I was having in mind. The genesis, but, something about, Derrida, I guess I had to read something for class, and he was like, oh, there's no such thing as genesis, and that seemed kind of compelling. But I feel like there was something else I was going to say. I don't know, I feel like there was, like, whatever. Who knows? That's all I got. That's all I got. Yep. Thank you for your time.